That's what I wanted. Hi, I'm Hildy, and one of the things that I feel you all need to learn that I do really well is tell stories. Stories are what going to make you different than everybody else who does what you do. I have to be honest, even the people I've never seen before on this call, the people I've met in person, I don't know anything about you. It's like when we meet, we talk business and we keep it very, oh, how's the weather and how do you make money? And that's not how I've been successful. And when I say successful, just to show you my credentials, last year I sold $1.4 million in swag. When you figure a pen is a buck, I sell a shitload. So, what makes me better than my competitors? I tell stories that click with people. So, I'm going to tell you a story now, and then I'm going to pick somebody and we're going to work on your story. So here is a truth. I was married 21 years ago, and my husband, while we met here in Atlanta, he was born and raised in Johannesburg. And so we flew to Cape Town for a pre-marriage honeymoon. And we arrived in Cape Town, and our hotel room wasn't ready yet. And I'd never been to South Africa. So he was super excited to teach me and show me all the foods that are very different. So we go into the hotel restaurant, and the first thing I tasted was a guava. Never even heard of a guava. And it was delicious. And he took me walking, and we saw, the beautiful water in Cape Town. And then our hotel room was ready. So we check into our hotel room, and he's on the phone with his mother because my husband's family, if they could all live in the same bed together, they would. They're so close, like crazy close. Anyway, he's chatting with his mother, and I go and I start feeling itchy. So I go into the bathroom and I lift up my shirt, and I've got a rash everywhere. So I go out and I show it to him, and they have Doc in the boxes there. So he's like, no problem. I'll just go down and I'll get some rash cream. So he gets me the rash cream, and a few hours later, it's getting worse. So then we go to the Doc in the box, and she looks at the rash, and we think it's the guava, right? Because I never had guava before. So you put two and two together. And she gives me an injection of steroids and gives me a breathing treatment because my throat is starting to close. So, and something to bathe in to help the rash. So I'm in the bath all night, wake up the next day, and I'm worse than I was the day before. So at this point, my husband decides to take me to the emergency room. And this is right after apartheid. And I don't expect anybody to understand all of this, but ultimately, he didn't know where the hospital was. He pulled over a police officer, and that police officer didn't know where the emergency room was. And again, there's like layers to that, but that's not important. He gets me to the emergency room, and the emergency room doctor looks at me and he starts scratching his head. And my husband says he knew then he should have taken me out of there, but he didn't. And the doctor gets me on IV steroids, IV antibiotics, and breathing treatment. And then he takes me back to the hotel room. The next day, I'm purple. So I'm getting worse and worse. So we didn't know what to do. So my husband calls his family in Johannesburg, which was where he was born and raised. And they've got all these connections and all these, and they found somebody who was a doctor in Cape Town. So we go to this woman, beautiful woman, beautiful inside, outside. And she looks at me and she's like, you're overdosing on steroids and antibiotics. You're basically killing yourself. At this point, I look like Veruca from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, big purple. And I didn't know what to do, but she told me to stop immediately all the antibiotics and all the steroids. And within a few days, it started becoming, my skin started becoming normal. And I didn't know, I still didn't know to this day. Well, not to this day, but at that time, I was in South Africa for 3 weeks, had this rash the whole time, but it was less when I stopped the steroids and antibiotics. And it wasn't until I got back to America and I had taken this picture, which I'll show you in a minute, and showed it to my allergist. And she's like, that's not from guava. That's a delayed reaction to an antibiotic that I had taken before I went to South Africa that didn't show itself until the day I arrived in Cape Town. So that's when I found out that I was allergic to Z-Pak, or one of those. I can't even remember, but it was an antibiotic that I'd taken for an ear infection so that I could get on the plane to go to South Africa. So a story like that is kind of a wow. And I am going to just show you quickly. Where's my picture? I had it up. I'm going to show you the picture that she saw, just so you can see how crazy. And this was just on my back. Let me see. Share. Can you see it? Can everybody see it? Am I showing the right picture? So this is just on my back, but this was all over my body, inside and outside. It was crazy. And it took about a month to go away. So that's my story. Now you all know something more about me than what I do to make money. And some part of that story resonated with you. It could have been my South African husband. It could have been guava. It could have been the rash. It could have been, but now every single one of you will never forget me. Even if it's, what was that chick's name that told me that story? I just heard the same story. And this is how everybody becomes addicted to me. And everybody I meet figures out a way they want to work with me so badly, because I'm amazing at making people like me. And I don't know how or why, because back in high school, I was suicidal from everybody hating me. So I've been able to turn my situations into things that make it a wow. So inside of my We Are Better Together Geiger mug, I've put everybody's name. Oh, wait, I got to get the last guy, Clayton. I got to add you. Somebody, we're going to find a story that maybe you can tell as well as I tell stories. I know I'm a good storyteller. I don't do the, and, yeah. I know I'm a good storyteller, but you all are, and I'm going to help one person today. And then anybody else who wants me to help them, I put my Calendly. I am happy to help you another time. All right, here we go. Watch, it's going to be somebody who's driving. Dave.
All right, let's go.
All right, Dave. Now, here's what I want you to do. I either want you to think of a story, like something that happened this weekend, or something that happened a really long time ago that you don't usually share with people. Like, Rachel, did you ever hear that story before?
Maybe, but I don't think in that detail. I feel like maybe.
But
we've known each other for a long time.
So Rachel and I have known each other for years and years. We live in the same subdivision. And I figured if anybody had heard that story, it was her. But if she did hear it, she didn't hear it in the detail. So this is what I want you to do, Dave. Think of like a picture that you have on your phone that you see all the time, just something that to you, and then I want you to tell the story, and then you and me and maybe everybody on the call will make it in such a way that it will be more of a three-dimensional feel, like my story was. Okay, go.
Yeah, so I've raised goats for the past 8 years, and the goats themselves, there was a purpose. We were going to do all this artsy stuff and make butter and stuff, but they ended up just being goats, like my pets. And every day I walk my goats, as funny as that sounds, and we go walk around my property in Connecticut while I'm still here. They're being transported today to rehome them. But my goats are like therapy for me, right? And has anybody ever tried to have like do meditation? Right?
Yes.
It's very difficult, right? When you first start. So here's the story. I'm out walking my goats one day, and I left my phone inside, and all of a sudden I'm like, I felt like I blacked out. And there was like this moment of clarity that I was just focused on my goats and spending my time with them. And that was the moment that I started realizing that I wasn't always focused on the things I was doing. Right. So I was always distracted by something else. But that one moment, it taught me how to be focused and just be present in that one moment, that moment, because we live in a series of moments. but that was like the moment. And that happened 2 years ago. So it's still relatively new. And it's like, to be present at something, you have to really be present, not distracted by other things. So the goats have been a huge educational piece to me, because I've also learned how to deal with death on my farm, whether it's animals through predation or they just get sick. The goats and living on a farm have been extremely helpful to me as to become a better person and understanding how life affects you, and yet still continues to go on. So how's that?
So from my OCD perfectionist, you didn't do any of the you knows, uhs, which is excellent. So you're a natural storyteller. I think if I was going to nuance it a little bit, I think you need to remember that no one else on this call has any connection to goats. So it might be that maybe you focus on one of the goats and give us personality traits of the one goat, the name, sex, the age, why this is your favorite of the goats, so that we can all connect in a more, goats is too broad. So bring it back into you and the one goat. And then I think your story is perfect. Does anybody else have any disagreements to that?
Yeah, I would offer something. So what I heard, from him was less about the goats than being present, which I think is a challenge really for everybody, with our phones and, all that kind of stuff. But I think it was a reminder of, because I think being present is very, very important. So I think the story is more about that than the goats.
I agree with that too. And I will tell you, when we're on these Zoom calls, when I'm on the call and I see somebody's head down, I know I've lost them. I know they're in their phone. And that's why I decided to make this interactive. So you never knew when you were going to get picked on. So if you were on your phone, you were going to be fucked. So Dave, your homework then is we need to Zoom. And when you Zoom, focus a little bit more, like Richard said, like it being present is something we can all grow and learn from. And then just add, I want to know about one goat and how that one goat connects with you. So thank you for playing. We're going to play. I think I have time for, let me see, when I put on a timer.
Well, I think we can do a breakout and talk about how you can integrate storytelling into your business, where that can support your business. But Dave, I would say a good way to start could be, if you wanted to craft that as a story, like that you could pull out of your back pocket, would be, I want to tell you how I learned about being present from my goats. And that's, thinking about that even as like a hook for a piece of content, because that's the lesson you took, right? And it's probably like, you could do a series of things I've learned from my goats around that. So
that is genius. I just want everybody on the call to think of stories like this. So whether they're doing social media or whether they're trying to explain how they're different than their competitor, they're not doing it in a salesy way. They're doing it in a human way.
Correct. Before we break out, Clayton, hi. I'm glad. Welcome. I'm sorry you joined late, so you didn't get to hear all of us introduce